Welcome to the midweek mailbag here on the Pride of Detroit podcast feed, live here on Twitch, live here on YouTube. We're back for another episode. We found ourselves in a little bit of a break in training camp, maybe aided by some nasty weather in New Jersey that caused me to not be in New Jersey right now. But we felt guilty that we weren't giving you guys the normal content that we do during training camp. Or I felt guilty. I don't know if Erik felt the same way.
No, I felt fine.
Okay, great. So my guilt led us to some more Lions content for you, more audio and video content for you. We are here. We are ready to answer your questions. As alluded to, my name is Jeremy Reisman. I'm the producer over at Pride of Detroit, Detroit Lions beat writer. And the other voice that you've already heard as I semi-introduced is the senior... Wait, what is it? I was about to call you the senior editor. Oh, boy. Here we go. Managing editor, also Lions beat writer, at Erik _. Not just Erik Schlitt. There's no underscore.
Wow.
I'm off right now. But Erik Schlitt is here. How we doing, Erik?
You know what it is? We get you out of our normal recording studio, and you're all thrown off. So
I don't think I was giving you titles on the Pride of Detroit Direct. I was just calling you Erik.
Right. Well, that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
You got into a rhythm, and now you've got to get back to our normal scheduled program here. And but look, it's nice. This is a unplanned part. We weren't expecting to do another one of these. For a few more weeks at least.
Right.
So it's nice to see you again, buddy.
Yeah, good to see you again. And just to break things down, since the return of the podcast is still new for a lot of people, the midweek mailbag is going to be a regular thing during the season. We didn't really plan to do much during the preseason because we're running around doing a million things. But the way it'll work is during a regular season month, you'll get a bunch of episodes. You'll get this weekly essentially, and then the last midweek mailbag of the month will be a Pride of Detroit Direct thing. So won't be on the podcast feed, but will still be available for subscribers. But we'll still be trying to do these every other week so that you guys get you get this content. Easy enough. But let's enough of the pleasantries. Let's get to it. Because a lot of questions as we're heading towards the first preseason game here with the Giants. But we got to start with the big unfortunate news that we got today, Tuesday morning. Manuel Moseley, with the worst luck in the world, suffers a torn pec. At this point, we're not entirely sure the severity of it. I know some people have speculated whether it needs surgery or not. Sometimes it does. Sometimes, like in T.J. Gardner-Johnson's case, didn't require surgery. But that was kind of a freak-like. I think Dan Campbell literally used the word freak to describe how quickly he got back from that. But first question here comes from Caitlin Rose, asks, with Moseley out for a considerable amount of time, does that affect the starting lineup depth in the secondary? So let's talk about, because there is, I think, at least a little bit of a domino effect, besides the obvious that Moseley was very much in contention for the starting nickel job.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, he's a guy who was probably going to make the roster. He looked into being in a really good spot. He was in this. He was maybe like you said, arguably the projected starter at this stage. Competition was still ongoing with Amik Robertson, so it certainly wasn't settled. But he was definitely in a good spot. They used him as a starter in the scrimmage. They used him. As the primary guy on most days. Now, they did do a little bit of a rotation with Robertson, so that's a great opportunity for him to step up. He's right now going to be, I think he would now be the expected starter.
Yep.
But at the same time, we have seen a lot of different guys go through that nickel rotation. Certainly Brian Branch, who played nickel all of last year, could be a guy who could see some spot starts. We saw Ennis Rakestraw getting nickel reps with the third team, almost anticipatory, it seems, at this point. Like they were like, hey, just in case, we need to start getting Rakestraw reps. And he was pulling double duty, second team outside corner, third team nickel. Like that's a workload for a rookie, and he was doing well with it. Then we also seen Maurice Norris, the safety / nickelback UDFA, who we've chatted up a few times, talked about how his range has been something that has caught our eye. And now he's in the mix. And then on top of all of that, Dan Campbell says on Monday in New Jersey that Ife Melifonwu is going to start getting reps there. That's even before
Yeah.
Moseley got hurt. So it does free up a spot for another defensive back to get an opportunity, but it's not necessarily going to be a one-to-one type replacement. It's not like, oh, now the Lions need a nickel. No, they have 4 or 5 nickels
Right.
that guys that they can choose from. I think it just frees up a defensive back
Yeah.
spot. And on my board, the first defensive back that was on the outs in my roster, in or outs that we do the bubble watch, was Brandon Joseph, the safety, UDFA a year ago. He was a guy who I had a hard time keeping out. And so for me, I'd probably put him in. I also think you could make an argument for Kendall Vildor, who was on the team last year, but wasn't out for me. He's been repping a little lower down the depth chart. Opportunity for him. So I don't think the Lions are in a spot where they're going to have to like go find a guy.
Yeah.
They have plenty of talent.
Yep.
It's just a new opportunity for someone else to step up.
Yeah, it's weird to talk about the secondary in that way, that they lost a potential starter, and the impact is really what you said. It's at the bottom of the roster. It's the 3 or 4 guys that I think are battling for that final spot. So Maurice Norris, I would add to that list. Stephen Gilmore, I would add to that list. Depending on what you think of how safe CJ Moore, like now his spot is a little bit safer, it seems like. But I'm with you. It's probably in that defensive back room, and it's not just localized to the nickel because, like you said, a lot of guys can play nickel. Brian Branch could still slide back to nickel, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But this leads us very cleanly into the next question, which is from Jacob Brown. Stephen Gilmore or Maurice Norris, which one is making the roster? He has a follow-up that's unrelated, but I think you, based on what you just said, they're both still on the outside looking in for you.
Yeah, they're both on the edge. Look, since this regime has taken over, a UDFA, at least one, has made the roster every year.
And I think that's going back almost beyond like a decade.
Oh, yeah.
Like that streak is insane.
It's very long. I think Justin said it was like 11 years. But again, I don't want to misquote him. But I think Norris is the UDFA with the best chance.
Yeah.
At the same time, you could argue that Gilmore was last year's best UDFA.
Right.
And that's why he was on the roster and they kept him tucked in all the time. We've seen flashes of Gilmore where he looks very much like he could be in the second team corner conversation. And then we've seen days when he's not.
Right.
And Norris is a guy with enough range and special teams prowess that he becomes kind of Brian Branch-esque with his range, not necessarily his play style, but like that's valuable to have a guy who can switch between the two roles. And so Norris is a guy that I'm definitely keeping my eye on. I think he's got a real shot. At the same time, Gilmore, they kept him on the roster for a reason. So if I had to lean one way, I'll go Gilmore, even though it hurts me because I really, really like Norris.
It's tough. It's really, really tough. And as this team continues to get better and making some roster decisions elsewhere, it's going to be hard to keep that UDFA streak alive. It really is. We know this team likes to keep developmental guys on their roster, but they also got a couple already, right? Like in other spots. And again, that's something that we might get to a little bit later. But when you're spending draft picks on developmental guys, it becomes harder to keep UDFAs around because with a team as good as they are right now, they aren't going to have like a Jerry Jacobs type that is going to play as a UDFA. They might make the roster as a UDFA, but I mean, we're talking about Maurice Norris. Maurice Norris is not going to be a starter on defense unless things have gone drastically wrong in terms of injuries. And so it's tougher in that route. And so I don't know, like I was very much aboard the Stephen Gilmore train after 1 week of training camp. And then I asked Dan Campbell about it and he's like, he needs to take another step. We need him to take another step. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
you did that to him, because I mean, I feel like it's been even more pronounced this year where Dan Campbell is like, you ask him about a player and he's either going to gush over him and say, oh my God, he's great, Jamar Jefferson, Jameson Williams, or we need to see more of that guy.
I do think the we need to see more out of that guy has become kind of a theme this year.
Sure.
He's said that about the wide receivers. He said that about some backup offensive linemen. Like,
yeah,
So he is using that a little bit more frequently than he has in the past. At the same time, I think the level of the bar that they have to get to, what level
Yeah.
they have to raise their game to, is certainly higher.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of these guys that he's saying do have to step up their game, they certainly
Right.
do.
It
They
kind of
have to. Like,
it
that's not a
fits.
lie.
It also fits in with like the message from the moment they lost the NFC Championship game, right? Which is
Oh
like
yeah.
we're gonna have to work twice as hard to get here, right? So
Mhm.
I think it's a little bit of that message mixed in with, yeah, like he's trying to light a fire under some of these guys that aren't performing to his standards.
It's interesting the parallels between Moseley's injury and Moody's injury, because the domino effect may actually benefit a player at an adjacent position
Right.
instead of directly at his position, and you're starting to see like UDFA guys now maybe on the fringe where they weren't before, and
Yeah.
it's an interesting parallel. But I mean, look, they've lost two guys to IR and two guys that are going to end up on IR cutdowns already. And you would think, man, losing four players would be, in the past, that's been pretty devastating. And then, but with this roster and the way it's built right now, they've had an answer for all of them, well, except for maybe kicker. But they've had they've had they've had answers like, oh, we have other guys, we just have to switch it around. And
Yeah.
that's like the beauty of a roster that's adaptable,
Sure.
right? Like, you don't necessarily have to one for one. How many times in years past have we seen a player go down and then it's like, uh-oh, we have to find a player that fits this role to do this job? And they don't have to. They have these shiftable players and crossover on how they use things, and it's a much different spot than the roster's been in quite a long time.
Sticking with the secondary here, old Christopher asked, "How do you feel about Branch shifting to safety? What would that do for that kind of the kind of disruption that he made last year?" And I think we can also kind of tie this into the Emmanuel Moseley conversation, because there's certainly at least a chance that opens up a little bit more Branch at nickel. I mean, it's also really tough, right? Because we just haven't seen a ton of Brian Branch out there. He's only had what 2 days of full
Yeah.
practice where he's actually in full team stuff. I don't know if he was full team on Tuesday. I haven't heard, but he wasn't on Monday. He was just doing some 7-on-7s, no 11-11. So I know I talked a little bit about this on the main POD cast, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk here, because I know you're not the biggest fan of this move, and I want to hear why.
Well, I'll tell you what. I talked to him twice this past week, and he's very excited about it. Like, he's not even shying away from it at all, because I was asking him about like what's better, what's easier about it, what's harder about it, like what are you looking to benefit? Are you worried you're going to lose that ability? And so first off, he's telling me that he's still going to play nickel. He's still going to get shots there. He's still going to get run there. There's going to be times when there's three safety sets and he's the nickel.
Right.
And we've seen that. We saw that a little bit
Sure.
in the scrimmage, a tiny, tiny bit. But I do think that's on the agenda. As far as playing safety, he thinks it opens him up more. And for me, I like him closer to the line of scrimmage because he's more impactful. He's the best tackler, arguably, on the team. But he looks at it as, I get to now roam all over the place. And I can move up, I can move back, I can move into the middle, I can stay in the slot. Like, he has slot to slot range of wherever he wants to go. And he thinks it will afford him the opportunity to make more plays on the ball. So he's very excited about it. And so if you want to be excited about this, about him doing it, making this switch on more of full-time basis, you have to like look at what he's saying and say, okay, I'm buying in on that. The downside for me is he's much better moving forward than moving backwards. Like, that's always been something that's been really good about him. And he said that the thing that he's the most nervous about, or the thing that's the most challenging for him, is that he is literally the last line of defense. And we saw on a Jamar Jefferson play in the scrimmage, Jamar got an angle on him in open space and he couldn't quite close the angle, and Jefferson was able to go. And so we saw that, come to fruition in front of our eyes. So, he's got to learn
Yeah.
he's got to learn the angles because they're different. Like they're a lot different. Like
Yep.
he's playing when he's up in the slot, he's playing like, quarter field, or if he's dropping back, he's got a little bit bigger range. But here he's got to have half field range, and he's got to have a lot of eye movement, understand how angles work moving away, because that's really where it was. Like he's moved towards the line so
Yep.
often. He doesn't he's never really had to move away from the line except for like passes in the flat or whatever. But again, he's watching stuff from here to the from the inside out. In this situation, he has to be able to learn to take angles outside, and that's where he got caught, right? That's exactly, Jefferson just took that angle on him. And so there's going to be a learning curve, but he believes in the long run that it will benefit him playing more at safety.
Yeah, there's only two things I have to add, which is one, Dan Campbell agrees with him, right? Dan Campbell went out and said, like, why he's excited about it is that it's going to afford him the opportunity to make more plays. He'll still get the opportunities to make those plays at the line that he was really good at last year, but he'll be a little bit of a ball hawk now, getting opportunities to pick the ball off and really dictate what the offense can do. Like he can literally be all over the field now rather than pretty much only lined up towards the line of scrimmage. But I think you tapped into there at the end, the part that I'm a little nervous about, which is it's new to him. He's learning a new position. Mm-hmm. It's going to take some trial and error. And unfortunately, because of the injury this offseason, he's not getting the reps that I think he needs to I mean, there's still a lot of, there's a month left, right? Like he still has a lot of time to get to build up those reps, but with him kind of being in and out of practice right now, it's not great. It's not ideal. And part of that makes me like, okay, well, if he's not getting the reps right now, let's just let him get healthy. Start him at the nickel to begin season. Start Iffy where he was comfortable last year, and then like gradually behind the scenes kind of work his way back into safety. I know it's not ideal to be doing it in the middle of the season, building the plane in the air, whatever analogy you want to use, but I want to make sure we're hitting the ground running in week 1. Like you're playing a couple of good teams right off the bat. You're playing a really good passing team in the Rams in week 1.
The thing that I think you nailed it there on is that they don't want to be building the plane during the season, right? Like they want to have it settled. And so that's why they're doing their testing now. And I get that. Like they're going to want to, because they want Branch back there so much that they're like, okay, if he's still good, we need to find ways to get him on the field. So let's try Iffy at nickel.
Right.
Here's the thing. If you watch Iffy play safety, like he plays a lot of nickel from that safety spot, which is what Branch is, it's not going to be unfamiliar to him. And it fits what they want to do, but they almost have like two nickel sets. They have like a big safety set, and then they have like their traditional, they're trying to add a traditional nickel. And that's something they haven't had in the past years. And I think that's something that they want, because there are going to be teams, like you said, like the Rams, that they're going to go up and say, oh, look at these great slot weapons. Now we're forcing Branch to play, these slot receivers, and that's not really what we want him to do. We want him to be more playing downhill, have more range. That's why we're moving him back to safety. Let's put a more traditional corner on those slot receivers. Maybe we'll get better coverage and Branch in a situation where he can, be a little bit more free. So I think the Rams game, what we saw last year, like where they played like 100% of nickel, right, against the Rams in the playoffs, right?
They're spreading 3 wide.
Right. And I kind of expect that again. And so I think in their mind, they want that option to have, 3 corners and 2 safeties. And so if they have their preference, I think they'd prefer the Terrion and Carlton Davis on the outside, Amik in the slot, and then Branch and Kirby at the nickel. I think that's what they would prefer if they were playing the Rams, on Thursday instead of the Giants.
Right. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to move away from the secondary. We're going to talk about some scrappy joint practices, talk about fights and whether these joint practices are worth it, and much more when we come back here on the Midweek Mailbag. We'll be right back. Okay, we are at the break. Appreciate y'all tuning in. We got a bunch of people on YouTube. What's up? Twitch, got you both open if you guys want to ask some questions here while we're in the middle of the break. And then while you send those in, I want to say give some shout outs to the people around. Let's scroll down to the beginning of the alerts. 20 minutes ago, Wizard, thank you for the 41-month subscribe to the channel. Says Go Lions. No, I'm sorry. Says Go Loins. Quirky Zerky, 36 months, 3 years subscribe to the channel. Says hanging out with the guys. We're here, baby. Someone named Z Snyder, thank you for the 16 months. Not sure who that is.
I think I do.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure. Healthy Sweater, thank you for the 37 months subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you. Duck Lion, 5 streams watching streak. Says, I watched you this many times. That's true. It's very, very true. OJ McCord, a full year subscribed to the channel now. Says, I'm happy the POD is back. Time for the main show. Oh, forgot that some people like to call it that. By the way, when we were exploring an independent podcast option, that was amongst the finalists in terms of calling like the entire show, the entire podcast feed, if we were ever going to move away. So anyone out there that's thinking of starting a Lions podcast, don't steal it. It's probably already out there, to be completely honest. Mrs. Rovey, 42 months subscribed to the channel.
Wow.
And said, never give up the sub. Is that 37 in a row? That's crazy. Anyone that was subscribing while we were away, you didn't have to do that. You're crazy. Chances are maybe you just forgot that it was automatically re-upping.
Just confidence.
But if you want your money back, I'll send you $5 in the mail. That's not true. I'm not going to hold myself to that, especially considering I don't even see all of that $5. But I do very much appreciate it. Nick the Greek 100 bits says, how to gas up the machine. 1, follow him on Twitter. 2, make a very stupid comment on his Twitter post. 3, get embarrassed. 4, scream at him and cry. 5, block him.
All right. So first of all, that guy didn't follow me on Twitter. So that's, yeah.
What was the original tweet that he got upset about?
I said Moseley was in line for a starting job, and he told me I was wrong.
Oh, okay.
And then I sometimes get mad when people just straight up go, no, you're wrong. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't think I'm wrong. And then the longer the conversation went on, the more I realized I was arguing with the wall. And so then he blocked me.
Then you were really arguing with the wall.
But the nice thing is that I had already screenshotted the conversation because I was laughing about it to Ryan. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, look, he's yelling at me. And so I already had him. So when he blocked me, I already had the receipts pulled. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Whatever, though,
It's whatever. Youper, thank you for the 15-month subscribe to us on Twitch. Toast, 8 months. Said, so happy the pod's back. What do we make of the overall performance of the offensive line at joint practices? We can answer this one because I don't think I have that in our rundown. Obviously, neither of us were there, so we're only basing this on secondhand observations. Sounds like Brian Burns was trouble. Oh, and
he's a great player.
Yeah, he's probably he's definitely a top 10 pass rusher, I think, in this league. Maybe
Certainly.
top, knocking on the door of top 5. So, I think you can excuse that. I also tend to think, in general, there's an over reporting that happens on a one-on-one drills. But football is not played like that. That's not how football works. There's not I mean, there are one-on-ones that happen, obviously, on the offensive line, but a lot of times it's, hey, Brian Burns is on this team. Let's offer our offensive tackle some help because you don't want that guy one-on-one, even if he's going up against Penei Sewell.
I think at the same time, I think most of that information is coming from the Giants media,
yes,
who is, of course, going to shine a very bright spotlight on a player that was their offseason, essentially. Like they had 2 big offseason moves, and that was trading for Burns and drafting Neighbors.
Right.
And that was all I heard about. Was those 2 guys.
Right.
And like that's not a coincidence,
yes,
right?
That's a very good point. And listen, like I'm not here saying that Giants media is skewing things or exaggerating. I just think in general, like when you're covering one team, like you're focused on that. And I said this on the POD cast, or at least during a break on the POD cast. Giants media loves to live tweet. They are obsessed with live tweeting. And I think Lions media, we've become so I mean, there are just much stricter rules in Detroit, and so most of Lions media has just been like, okay, tweeting's not really worth it. Like,
yeah, I would rather write, feverishly in my notebook and then pass it along in my observations than put my head down, open up Twitter, try and tweet something out, and then miss, a play. Because often that's happened to me in the past that I put my head down because I want to tweet something, right? And then,
and a couple Giants writers do something that very much does bother me in training camp reporting, and it's not localized to them, but it's like, it's the counting of quarterback stats. It's Daniel Jones.
They were counting wide receiver stats too.
Yeah, Daniel Jones was 11 of 16 today, and it's like, okay, you're counting like with 5 touchdowns. It's like, okay, but 80% of that was 7-on-7 red zone work. That doesn't count as real football. I'm sorry, it doesn't.
My favorite was of this offseason was J.J. McCarthy getting sacked twice,
right,
and then rolling out of the pocket and making a tough throw, and then the Vikings fans being like, he is the second coming of Patrick Mahomes. And I'm
right. Look, and that's the thing too. A lot of times you're counting catches and passes that happen on a play that would have gotten sacked, because most of the time they play through something. There was a big touchdown pass that Goff threw to 88, Caden Davis today.
Yeah, he would have got sacked.
Yeah, there was a blitzer that no one touched, like completely untouched.
Yeah, he would have been sacked.
Yeah,
unless there was a back that would have got him, but they did. It looked like they were empty. But there was. So
it
was a great throw. Look, and let's not discount the throws, but at the same time, we have to have perspective on the fact that the JJ McCarthy play that I was talking about, that I saw, like the cornerback had to cover for like 7 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, the guy's going to get open if you have to cover for 7 seconds. Right. So, like, yes, don't discount good throws, but also have some, like, common sense. And look, let's be honest. There's a lot of people that cover training camp on a daily basis outside of Detroit, inside of Detroit, that really don't know what they're looking at.
There's some that know, and then there are some that are just like...
There's some that don't know what they're looking at. And I'm not naming names, okay? Unless we hit 5... No, I'm just kidding.
200 subs right now, and Erik will plaster Lions and Giants media members.
No, I'm just kidding.
I'm also kidding.
But there's just a lot of people that don't know what they're looking at, right? Like, they don't understand, like, okay, if you're 6-7 seconds into a play, it doesn't matter. Like, you're not going to have that kind of time. And then there's reasons why things are done. There's ideology behind why we're running this, this scheme in this situation, or this, like, we're not trying to, like, score a touchdown. We're trying to, like, run the clock out. Like, some people don't pick up those concepts or the differences between them. And they're like, oh man, they could have scored that touchdown if they would have done a little bit better, or they would have run a little deeper. Well, that wasn't the goal. The goal's convert, and then game's over. Cause like we saw in the Rams game, since we seem to be talking about that game a lot, let's keep bringing that up.
Mink over on YouTube brings up a decent point and says, I did find it surprising reading New York Giants observations and how exaggerated the Giants players did, and how Lions players' wins weren't recorded on video. Yeah, I mean, so there's a guy out there, I can't remember his name, and this isn't me throwing him under the bus. Yeah. But he posted a ton of one-on-ones today between offensive, defensive line, and they were all Giants wins. Like, every single one he posted were Giants wins. And listen, that's what plays to his audience. And I think, like, he was fair. Like, sometimes he wrote, like, Andrew Thomas won 2 out of 3 reps. Here's the 2 that I got. And they both just happened to be the wins, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, this happened last year too, and it's interesting to me because my recollection of last year was 2 pretty even practices. But the Giants' recollection of practice is, oh, they were way behind. The Lions took it to them. Now, after day 1, the Giants are back. And it's just like, did I miss out on the narrative back last year? Because was I misremembering it? Or
I don't know.
Are the Giants creating this narrative that, okay, now they're going toe-to-toe with a Super Bowl contender? Or is it just maybe I was impacted by the overwhelming amount of Giants media live tweeting practices both this year and last year? I don't know. I will say it's very hard to grasp when you're watching joint practices. Sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting you off. It's hard to really like take in all of the data in a single practice and definitively say this team is better than that team.
Yeah, look, how many times at the end of practices these past 2 weeks did you look at me and say, I feel like the defense won today. What'd you think? And I'm like, I got to look back at my notes to really getting, and then it's like, oh yes, they clearly did. Or I don't know, maybe I'll push back on that, but like, yeah, certainly, stuff happens fast and you just have to keep your head down and go and jot and go. And like, if you're taking time to video, it takes away from other things. If you're taking time to tweet, it takes away from other things. And I've learned over my 10 years covering the team that or 7, on the sidelines there, but that I have to do it a certain way or I'm going to miss and I'm not going to gain the perspective that I want to gain. And everybody does it differently. The Giants last year had an abundance of media, and then the Jaguars, they sent one
That's
media.
Right. I forgot about that.
and then I remember the Lions fans saying, why aren't the Lions writers tweeting? And it was because we were under the Lions rules. We had a whole bunch of stuff we couldn't tweet, and the Giants media doesn't have to follow the Lions rules. But we still did because it was in Allen Park. And so we had, we were limited. All the Giants stuff got out there. Everybody thought the Giants were beating up on the Lions at first practice. And then with the Jaguars, no one was tweeting because it was just the one person. And then we got people yelling about that. So,
but I will say the coverage was a little bit more even today, which to me says the Lions were probably outplaying them today. I wrote about it a little bit. I thought the 2 guys from Big Blue View, the SB Nation Giants site, and 100% recommend their breakdowns of today's practice. 2 separate articles. I thought they were pretty fair and openly admitting the Lions defensive line came at it a little bit today. The offensive line was a little porous for the Giants, and the Lions offense, it sounded like, had a pretty decent day, particularly running the ball. And so if that's the case, maybe Lions did take it to him a little bit today. But again, secondhand reports, we don't know.
Yeah. What was the original question here? Because we started to talk about something and we kind of went down the rabbit hole.
Mostly about the Giants reporting.
Okay. I thought it was something else. Maybe it's one of the next mailbag questions that we have or something that I'm registering in my brain here. Okay.
Do you have something you want to talk about, or can I think a couple more people?
No, keep going. Yeah, because I would
okay.
If it was organically coming up, I was going to bring it up.
It was. What do we make of the overall performance of the offensive line at joint practices? That was the original question.
Okay, I think it's hard to tell, right? I thought we saw Sewell look like Sewell, right? That's the only video I saw, so I don't know how to gauge much else, which is a shame because the Giants have good defensive line.
Dexter Lawrence. Thibodeau.
Yeah, Lawrence is fantastic.
We saw the clip of Kayvon Thibodeau taking it to Penei Sewell. I should say taking it to Penei Sewell.
Is that the one where Sewell pushed him on the ground?
No, it was the one where Kayvon Thibodeau didn't win and he was against Taylor Decker. And a Giants fan tweeted that he beat Penei Sewell. It was very much a troll tweet that a lot of people bought into.
Hey, I saw one okay, never mind. I'm going to stop. I don't want bad.
All right.
People.
All right.
Keep going.
Summer Guy, thank you for the 22 months, says let's scrap. A lot of scrapping, and we're going to get to that on the show once we're back in podcast mode. J-Dubs 5 stream viewing streak says we're going streaking. That's right. Austin Mammoth 23 months says Kirby by unanimous decision. Should Neighbors go into concussion protocol? Is he trying to get injured, suspended to avoid playing the Red Devil and the Dumpster Rat Giant? Stay tuned. Kirby did get him good.
I'll save my comments for the podcast. I guess, maybe
fair enough.
Because everyone wants to talk about that stuff. So
they do. Brad Holmes' Bulge, thank you for the 11 months. Says I read from Justin and SI that Khalif took a kick return to the house today. Do you think he's the favorite to win the job? I think he's definitely a favorite to be one of the two back there, right?
Yeah, I have my two. I'm locked in on my two.
Sione is the other
disagree. Oh yeah.
And I read Justin, and I believe he said those two were the starters today.
They've been.
And then a little bit.
When Khalif is out there, it's been Sione.
Yeah.
And then I asked him, first of all, Baki, one of the best interviews I've ever had.
Yeah.
I've interviewed him twice now. He's unbelievably honest and forthcoming and respectful, and
that's great. He
pauses to think about his questions.
I love when Campbell does that really well, and I love when players do it too. They're not just giving you, got to get harder got to work harder every day and get better one day at a time. They're not giving you those.
The first question that I asked him, I talked to him previously to set up the interview, a longer interview. And then when I did talk to him and I was reintroduced myself, first question I asked him, I timed it, literally. It took 7 seconds before he answered me. Do you know how long 7 seconds is when it's just two people?
Yeah.
It's a long time. And he wanted to be very articulate and give me a good answer. And I totally respect that. Vaki is a fun guy that I'm excited about. But yes, I think Khalif is going to be the guy they want to get the ball, and Vaki is going to be the guy that gets emotion and ends up kind of blocking for him. And he's also the return skills if the ball comes my way as well. Right. So I think both those guys sitting back there, that's the answer to me.
Yeah.
That seems like what they wanted to do. It seems like the direction they're headed. And I'm all aboard that train.
The interesting thing about Vaki back there is that I think he could play any role on that kick return team, right? He could be on the outside. Yes. And so to me, I think there's still a little bit of hey, prove it as a returner. And I think he has the skill set to do that, but you might have better options behind you, right? You might like Jamar better, you might like Maurice Alexander better. There's some guys that have returning chops. And because Vaki can be anywhere there, I think on the kick return team, it could open up an opportunity. Is all I'm saying. You don't want to take Vaki off the field for sure. My question is, does he bring the most as a returner?
Well, I think he is one of the most confident players in his own hands. Yep. And so you don't have to worry about flubbing the ball, which is, you'd say the same thing for Khalif. He tracks that ball better than anybody. And I think the way that the new return rules are set up, they're set up almost like punts at this point now, right? Which is why I think Khalif is probably the leader in the clubhouse for me. Yes. I think Vaki just fits in perfectly. They thought, the more I talked to him and the more I talked to other people, they thought Vaki was the best special teams player in the class, bar none. They thought they could use him as a starter in all 4 phases, and they certainly have. Because I've asked him, hey, who are you looking to for this, the punt return drills or whatever. And he's like, oh, I talked to Craig about those because Craig's same body type as me. And they do this. And I'm like, okay, well, who are you learning from on kick returns? And he's like, well, I that's where I go to Khalif, and Khalif has got, he's faster than I am, but I love his vision and his decisiveness. And it's again, stuff that fits Vaki. And then it's oh, well, who are you looking at in when you're on the other side? And he's like, well, the first guy I go to is Jalen Reeves-Maybin, because why wouldn't you go to a Pro Bowl special teamer? And I'm like, geez, oh, Pete's he's, how many guys don't know he went to the Pro Bowl because of special teams, but not him. He knows it. And then he's and he's got the right guys that he's I go to him for this. I go to him for this. I go to him for this. And it's just
like Kirby. He's absorbing all of the right people and trying to get their traits.
It's very smart. Yeah. It's a very smart approach, and the kid is humble. Like, do you remember the rep where he pancaked Craig Reynolds? Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And he wouldn't even admit, like, and he flexed after, like, he pancakes him, he
He did
flexes.
flex over him, which is wild for a rookie.
Yes. I talked to him about that, and he wouldn't even admit that he won it. He was like, "Yeah, I think I won it."
He's a humble kid. You could definitely tell he's a humble kid. In general.
Love him.
Maybe not
He's
when
great.
he's on the field, but
Yeah,
kid.
but like I think those two, for me, those two are the guys. I
Yeah.
think if
I mean,
I don't
Craig's
know
in there
who to
too, yeah.
introduce. I think Craig's good, but I think they've always liked Craig kind of like as that kind of up back guy. Like
But that's the
and
thing, like
so,
you kind of have to be both, right? Which is also why I think Vaki is great at it, right? Like a former safety as your lead blocker. That's good too. So yeah, it's kind of a weird balance that you have to have in your returners. Like, is Khalif going to be a good lead blocker? I don't know. That's not his game, but he's so good as a returner, he has to be one of those guys.
But I tell you, Khalif is such a bulldog.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
No
like
doubt.
he's
The
not
will
gonna
is there, no question.
Yes, he's not going to shy away from like anybody.
No.
Like you're not going to ever see him back off of a block or if a
That
guy's bigger than him or anything like that. Like, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm not 100% sure, but like that first major fight that happened on Monday, I think he was right in the mix of it, and I think like he was the one that got tossed to the side, and like he came zooming right back in and is just getting in someone. Like I think Bulldog is the right answer for who he is as a person, which is because I mean if you ever talked to him or you watched his inside the helmet or behind the helmet, whatever it's called. Inside the den, behind the helmet. I don't know my prepositions.
Under the helmet.
Under the helmet. Like the sweetest guy. I think if you were to, I think he would be. Sometimes they ask like, who's someone in the locker room that you would let date your sister? Like I think Khalif would be that guy.
Well, he's engaged. Is he? Or I don't know. Is he married yet?
Well, it's a good question because he got engaged in the episode of
a year ago. Yeah.
What
wasn't
did
it?
You say? Under the helmet?
You said like a year ago.
Yeah.
Under the helmet.
What is? I've already forgotten what it actually is.
Yeah, it's under the helmet.
It is okay. Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways.
We went down a rabbit. We've gone down many rabbit holes here. That's the problem. I don't even remember the original question, but that's what we got. This is where we are. Oh yeah, I think that's happening.
Yeah.
He's so fast.
In proximity
he's so fast,
to the helmet.
and he's so good. He's so fast. Look, and again, this is from Baki. It's like if he hits one hole, it's done.
Yeah.
Like that's all it takes because he has that speed. Like I know everybody's clamoring like, oh, let's put JMO back there because he's going to be so fast. Look, JMO's the fastest guy in the team.
Don't do it.
But you don't want to put JMO back there, first of all.
Don't do it.
Yeah. But I don't know who you would say is the second fastest. Is Gibbs the second fastest or is Khalif the second fastest? Because I think you could go either way.
Yeah.
Like that's how fast Khalif is. Like he's legit just goes. It's awfully impressive.
Joshua Mercer, thank you for the 100 bits on Twitch. Says Malik Neighbors 17 for 18 in catches, 0 for 1 in fights. He's lucky he had a helmet because he got pieced up. No.
I just looked it up. Jameer 436, 40 at the combine. Khalif 434. So
there you go.
A little bit faster.
Joshua Mercer also wanted me to change my background. Do you have a clean shot of Kirby on Malik Neighbors? Does anyone have a picture of that or a screenshot of that? I don't know if I can do that in the middle of a break, but I'll gladly change my background to that. If someone can find a good screenshot of that, either on Twitter or YouTube, DM it to me on Twitter. And
I would think it would be a little grainy because of everything was shot with phones, right?
Yeah, right.
And so you're zooming in on a phone video from a distance. So I'm sure there's nothing really clean.
My favorite thing to come up from that is that Graham Glasgow retweeted a slow-mo video of Kirby just landing like 3 punches in a row. I know it's dumb and I know it's stupid for players to be punching guys with helmets and face masks and dangerous and all that sort of stuff, but
certainly
I also think it's like the wide and this is like anything on the internet, right? Like you're just going to get wild reactions on both sides where it's like, yeah, I want to like, let's beat their ass type of thing. And then you're also going to get like, this is undisciplined. Dan Campbell's a meathead, blah, blah, blah. It's like, guys.
All right. We're eating into our segment, our next
You're
lead
right.
off.
You're right.
Let's back it down a bit.
Yes.
Do we have more people to say thank you to?
No, I'm basically caught up at this moment, except
Awesome.
Matt Sick. Thank you for watching 5 streams in a row.
Nice.
But yeah, caught up there. What is that? Oh, we just got people talking in our Slack. Someone asked about your interview with Stenberg, and I think they meant Sorsdal. That was way back.
I've talked to him a few times, to the point where you make fun of me now whenever I talk.
Oh, I sure do. Erik, how did your conversation, and yeah, he definitely meant Sorsdal, go about training more at guard?
Oh, I didn't get to finish that conversation.
Oh.
I like the conversation I had earlier was about him wanting to do it, and then when he actually did it, his family was there that day.
That's right.
And so I didn't interrupt his family, and then the next day was the last day, and I didn't get him that day.
Gotcha.
So I never actually did my follow-up with the guard stuff, but this weekend, I'll probably talk to him this weekend.
Sunday. Next practice that we'll be at, and you POD subscribers will get a fresh new video. I didn't even talk to you about this, but I think we're probably going to do a video after the preseason game too, you and me.
No, whatever.
That's what we did last year.
You mean also, like immediately after, or like the next, or like
for the next morning?
Okay.
It's gonna be late though.
It's a 7:00 game, right?
Oh, it's 7. You're right, not 8. I was thinking 8. So that'll be all right.
Yeah, but my kids will be in bed, so I don't care what I'll be. I'll have time.
The other thing, and I don't want to overpromise here, but what I'm aiming to do in lieu of not having your daily updates on Pride Detroit Direct for these practices is I'm trying to set up an interview tomorrow to be posted for our preview newsletter on Thursday morning, talking to a Giants guy that was there for both practices and getting the breakdown there. So if you're a Pride of Detroit Direct subscriber, that's what's on the way for you. All right, I think we should get back to it. Yeah, I should change the schedule on the POD Twitch. But we'll get back to it. Get back to the questions that we got on Twitter, and then we'll do an off-air segment after this to answer any more of your lingering questions. So if you live on YouTube or Twitch have any more questions, hold them until the end of this segment, and after the show we'll answer a couple more. Okay, let's do it. Welcome back to... Hold on, I'm going to redo that. Messed it up. No one sent me a version of the background, Joshua. So I need someone to send it to me. Welcome back to the Midweek Mailbag, here live on Twitch and YouTube, while also in your ears on our podcast feed, where you can get podcasts anywhere. We're going to do these weekly, so if you ever have a question, send it to us over on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. If you want to hashtag it AskPOD, it's a good way for us to see it even quicker. But let's get back to it. Like I promised, we're going to talk some joint practices, and this question comes from David Mara. Says, given all the injury and fights this week, is it time to scrap joint practices for good?
I don't think they will. I don't think they really.
But should they?
Ever will.
I don't. I'm with you. I don't think Dan Campbell loves them. First of all.
Yeah,
but should
and I think the players do too. A couple things. I think I think there's absolutely a negative that can come out of joint practice if you start getting players injured by, like, getting into too many skirmishes. Um, they seem to have a little bit more control over their actions for the better part of the second day of practices, but they were certainly a lot more chippy this year than they were when the Giants were in Detroit or in Allen Park last year. So I don't know if it's just I don't know. I don't know what the circumstances surrounding it that caused it to be a little bit more chippy. Whatever they are, it certainly was. The thing that the thing that doesn't bother me about the chippiness is if you ever watch the brawls and you kind of look on the perimeters and you catch a coach, they don't care. Like there's literally some videos that where the coaches are just looking at their playbook ready to call the next play. There was like one of the first skirmishes that was happening. Um, all the players are like making their way towards the sideline, and Norris, the UDFA rookie safety, he's walking, and then the safety coach just walks up, and they both stop in the middle of like the frame, and they're just talking about like what he was supposed to do. They were like,
Right.
the coaches do not care, right? Like they just don't.
To a degree.
Yeah, it usually gets calmed down relatively quickly.
Yeah.
But the coaches don't seem to be as bothered by it as the general population of people, right? The fans,
Yes.
the fans, the media, etc. So I don't think the coaches are bothered by it. I do think there's an inherent risk whenever you start getting physical like that, and so there's always some trepidation of injury or worry about injury, right? And so you should be cautious in your approach. And I think not everyone's mixing it up, but more often than not, it's usually just a couple of guys that are mixing it up, and most of the other guys are trying to separate it, and it just
Yes.
looks like a bigger fiasco than it is. Um, I'm going to let you talk, and then I'm going to tell you the biggest reason why I think they'll never stop doing this.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I think I want to add is what Dan Campbell said about it, really in both days. Like, a reporter asked him, like, how do we keep things from getting out of control in day one? Because reporters know this happens in joint practices. This is relatively normal. Now, on day one, did it go way beyond what it normally does? Yeah, definitely. No question. It seemed like there was 8 or 9 or 10 scrums. That's way more than normal. And not to mention, like, the practice was just physical, right? Like, a lot of high contact collisions, things like that. And Dan Campbell said, listen, like, I'm going to evaluate players like this is a game. And if you go above and beyond what's legal, you're going to get dinged for that. And we even saw in practice, too, I saw a couple clips of, like, you're out of the game. Like, Dan Campbell pulled Levi Onwuzurike off the field after getting into a mix-up on Tuesday. And so, like, there is a limit to some of this stuff. I do think generally coaches don't care that much, but, like, the swinging is where I think everyone is like, okay, we can't have this. Don't throw punches at helmets. That's going to get you kicked out of a regular season game. So let's
even pads,
right?
Yeah, like anything
Yes.
that all the protective equipment is there to protect you,
Right?
Not your bare hands. So.
Right. So I think that's where it's crossing a line a little bit. But like the physicalness of practice, the injuries that have happened, all outside of Moseley being relatively minor, I don't think that bothers Campbell one bit. Mm-hmm. I think, in fact, I think that's why Campbell loves these things, is that you do get that physical contact from an opposing team in a way that you're not friendly firing, right? Like, you're not injuring your own guys. You don't want anyone to get injured, but we saw the Dan Campbell speech on Hard Knocks, right? You need to have that physical contact. You need to start getting your body ready. You need to start training your body to deliver those kind of hits before the regular season starts so that you can hit the ground running. So this is kind of a necessary part of the process, and I think it's something beneficial that joint practices have. I was having this discussion with someone on the Pride Detroit comment section where it's like, I think at this point there's more bad than good that's coming out of these things. And I'm like, it's hard. That's hard arithmetic to do, because it's easy to point out the negatives, right? You lose Emmanuel Moseley. These other guys are getting nicks and bruises and might not be ready. But how do you quantify the positives that are coming out of it? It's hard. But it's in
Well,
all of what?
I said I'd be happy to try and answer that.
Well,
question.
I mean, they had 2 joint practices last year and made the NFC Championship game. Like, do you want to create that causation correlation line? I don't know, but I do think that they see more benefit in it, and I kind of agree because I think you do need to have that physical nature in August before you can take it into September.
So, any game situation that you're in, like during the preseason, it's all uncontrolled.
Sure.
It's just a game atmosphere. You can't set yourself up to test guys in certain ways. In joint practices, you can put guys in specific situations to test certain specific skills in order to try and put stressors on your guys to see where their limits are. In a preseason game, like preseason game 1, the most snaps you're going to get are probably 10 in an opening drive. That's probably going to be closer to 5. Okay. And by preseason 3 in old traditional senses, the most you were getting was maybe 40 because you're playing like a half or 3/4. The Lions get 40 game like reps with their starters each day of joint practices. And it's in a controlled environment that they set the parameters for, that tests the things that they want to test. It's like having 2 preseason games that you can control what the down and distance and the snaps and the outcomes, or get to the desired outcomes that you want. You can't get that in a preseason game. The preseason game is mostly for your developmental guys. It's not testing your starters.
Yep.
So this was how you test your starters. This was how you separate who are your starters and who are the guys that are still competing. And you know who the starters are, or the guys that are going to be heavy contributors? Those are the guys not dressed in preseason game 1, because they're the ones that have made the most effort. So that's the value in these joint practices.
And it's more safe than playing them in the preseason, right? There's usually not live tackling that's happening in these live practices. There's a lot of contact, and there's some hits that you see, but in general, you're not live tackling, and that's where a lot of some of the injuries happen. And so it's actually safer than playing these starters in the preseason game, but it's still getting a lot of that necessary contact and regular season mode that you can get from the preseason games.
Especially true for quarterbacks, because you don't touch quarterbacks, right? Lions had 2 sets of joint practices last year, as you mentioned. None of their quarterbacks got injured, and then that's where Nate Sudfeld got injured, was in a preseason game, and that's why he missed the entire year. Like, could be coincidence, right? But it seems like when you're in those live tackling situations, you are more susceptible to injury, and so they try and control those as best they can, and joint practices give them that opportunity.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the wide receiver 3 position, because that is always a hot topic this time of year, right? Or it is a hot topic right now. Michael Lucchese asks, fans seem obsessed with knowing who will be wide receiver 3, but what approach do you expect the coaching staff to take for that spot?
My take on that spot is that they want a big-bodied guy with length that can do certain things on the field. Sometimes it's going to be stretch. Sometimes it's going to be 15-yard crossers over the middle. Sometimes it's going to be Josh Reynolds special back of the end zone to stretch the D. It's kind of like we saw JMO in a secondary stretch role last year, right? Where we're working him in, we're getting him going, but we need someone to kind of put stress on the secondary to free up our weapons, which are primarily out of the slot. That's the X role this year, I think, kind of takes that over. We need this big body guy to be a bit of a bully, to push the secondary in spots that they don't necessarily want to be in, and kind of free up our slot guys. It would not surprise me if whoever wins the starting X, if they at the end of the season have less statistical production than Khalif Raymond,
right,
who will technically not be a starter. So I expect them to hand that wide receiver X spot to whoever's the most consistent and the most reliable, because that is what they had in Josh Reynolds, and that's what they're missing. And right now, through 2 weeks, that's been Fountain.
Yeah.
And Fountain is a guy who has shown more consistency, more ability to win contested catches, and that's why he is in the spot he's in.
Yeah. And I mean, you regurgitated basically everything that Ben Johnson said last week, right? We'd prefer
Well,
that spot.
great minds,
Sure.
right?
Or you just took what he said and made it your own opinion. But yeah, I mean, he said basically like I'd prefer that to be a bigger bodied guy. He's going to play on the outside, and I think part of the issue here is some people are conflating people are I think we have the conversation where we're talking about wide receiver 3, but we really almost mean wide receiver X, the X position, which is that outside guy that you prefer to be speedy, but also a little physical and all that sort of stuff. The Josh Reynolds role. But you're right to point out that Khalif is going to get more. It's very likely to get more production because, again, Ben Johnson even said it, like he's going to be a big part of this offense. And so I think it's even possible that Khalif Raymond might outsnap quote unquote wide receiver 3.
Maybe. Yeah.
It's gonna be close. The one guy that I think maybe is starting to enter that conversation a little bit, at least based on some of the things we saw from these two practices, is Caden Davis. Now, Davis isn't exactly as big bodied as the other 3 options that are there, but he made a ton of plays in the spring. He's been making a couple with the 2s in summer, and now he's getting some 1 reps. And so it's just another guy to keep an eye on, because it does feel like that position is very much in the open right now.
Yeah, I think it is. I think all the guys in the competition are probably going to play in the preseason.
Yeah.
It would surprise me if they didn't.
Correct.
And so, we're going to look at them.
Yeah.
And, Goff isn't going to play. They've already said that, right? So now the question becomes, who can be Hendon Hooker's favorite target? Because I expect Hendon to start. I mean, maybe Sudfeld starts, and I don't know. I don't know whose turn it is in the rotation. But
in my opinion,
Hooker's
going to play at least 3 quarters, regardless of who starts.
Okay.
Because, I mean, did you hear Dan Campbell talk about Hooker yesterday? Where he's just like, that dude just needs reps. I don't care if it's against the Giants.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's against the Lions. I don't care if it's walkthroughs. I don't care if he's playing that dude just needs reps. So give that man 3 quarters in every single game. Maybe even 4. I don't care.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I think he just like you said, they're starting to do things with him as well that they can't do with the other.
I was going to say are unique to him 100%.
Yes. And I don't know if I can share that, but I don't know because there's the rules get a little bit.
I mean, it's just use your imagination.
It's
what does Hendon Hooker do that maybe the other 2 can't do?
Yeah.
What and did they're trying
do
some
well
at
Tennessee?
Yeah.
One of the things he did really well at Tennessee, he's also replicating in Allen Park.
All right. Continuing with the wide receiver 3 theme here. Reese Shane Weather on Twitter asks, what's a bigger concern? 3rd wide receiver spot or guard depth right now? Now, to put this in the proper context, I think part of the guard concern is just the injuries. You lose Netane Muti for the season.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on exactly with
Coyote.
Coyote seems like he's at least healthy enough to be back on the field. But with the rookie, drawing a blank, 6-round pick,
Christian
Mahogany. Yeah,
Jeez,
continues
Moseley.
to be on the non-football illness list, which he might stay on for the start of the regular season at this point. And so your depth is Coyote, Oshika. Your depth is
Colby
Sorsdal, who's looks like he's moving back at least a little bit to guard, splitting time between guard and tackle.
You're probably going to have Michael Neese plus 1 UDFA on the practice squad.
Yep.
So you can always call one of those guys up if you're worried about some depth. And yeah, I mean,
and does Butker make the team as some veteran depth?
Yeah, you never know. I mean, he started a handful of games, like 18 games or something like that, over his career. It might even be more than that, to be honest. I don't recall off the top of my head, but he is playing with the second team now for a reason because he has more veteran experience and he's more ready to step in. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, in my mind, the starting five are what they are.
Yeah.
Yodi, Sorsdal, and Manu are all guys that I think are like in really good spots and probably
Yes.
the favorites. And that's eight. And Manu's not going to play, so now that seems like it's going to be Skipper. I think with Moody gone, Skipper benefits from that. And I know Skipper's a big fan favorite, but I don't know. I mean, like I would be pressed to push a guard into that conversation above one of those nine guys that we just talked about,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not as worried about that. I don't know who the wide receiver starter is going to be. At the same time, yeah. So I'll say wide receiver three because I don't know who the starter is going to be. I don't even know who wide receiver five is going to be. I know one,
If
two,
there
and
is
four,
one.
right? Well, there should be five at least.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so I think that the unknown to me is a little bit more worrisome.
I it's tough because overall, am I worried about the offense? Not really. I think the Lions have enough weapons. I think they have enough versatile players that they're going to be fine, despite maybe not having a 1-to-1 Josh Reynolds replacement. I think they have enough guys probably on the offensive line as long as they don't, I don't know, have 2 or 3 more injuries to the position that they'll be okay. So like I'm not trying to panic, and I almost feel like I started this like interior offensive line panic a little bit.
Well, here,
And I
okay,
don't.
Moody,
I want to be clear that I
Moody's.
don't. Yeah,
Go ahead. I was saying Moody's one of your guys. Like
he
you
was.
liked him. You
I did.
thought he was going to make the team.
Yes.
I didn't have him in. So
Yeah.
for me, I'm just like, okay, that's tough. He was competing, but like, I don't think it's as detrimental as people are like, we're talking
Right.
about OL9,
Yeah.
right? Like no matter who it is.
I think people just
So-
like the idea that there was a lot of competition that
Sure.
with Moody, with Mahogany,
Sure.
and now you don't have those guys, and so now you can't afford to lose Coyote. You can't afford to lose a starter. You know, the fact that like right after all these guys go down, Zeitler goes down, and you're just like, oh my god, what's happening? How does it always seem to happen that the Lions offensive line in training camp, the final preseason game, whatever, a practice in week one of these guys gets injured.
all the right guards were hurt at one point. Like all of them.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So
Anyways,
I'm more worried about wide receiver 3 than OL9. That's what it comes down to me.
fair enough. All right, we're going to try to rush through these final two, and then we'll talk with our live audience off air a little bit. Billy Joel, not that one, asks, how does the emergence of Levi Onwuzurike impact such players as DJ Reader and Josh Paschal? And as a part two, is Josh Paschal playing above or below your expectations? Seems like we haven't heard much from him this camp. I think we can both agree that Levi doesn't have much of an impact on Reader because Levi seems to be playing more. Oh, okay, a little bit. But but Levi's playing a little bit more 3 to 5 to maybe even a little 7 than DJ, who's essentially going to be nose. But go ahead.
The only time that he's going to impact Reader is if they are in 4-man fronts and like Reader needs a spell or they want to use more dual 3 techniques.
Right.
Like that's really it. Because
and they
like,
might do that anyways, right? Because
certainly
you're not going to play Reader 80% of the time.
No. You're lucky to get 50.
Right.
Honestly, he should play more, but he's also getting older and coming off 2 season-ending surgery. So like, you're going to take it easy on him. But for the PODD subscribers, they heard us kind of break down like how the line is shifting between their kind of base 3-4 set or 5-2 set or whatever you want to call it, based on, it's probably more like a 5-2 to be honest, but it looks the same as a 3-4. And then versus their nickel, because the interior, it I don't want to say it radically shifts, but it shifts notably. Like Levi goes from being a 5 technique and like kind of a base to being like a 3 technique in a sub package set. And so that might not seem like that big of a difference, but it's like a starter to a backup role. And Pascal is kind of in that same boat. I kind of see
Yes.
him as that guy who was the five technique starter and in when you have your three down linemen and your two stand up edge guys, but Levi passed him. And so Pascal has kind of been looked over, which I think why he's not getting reported on as much. But I also mentioned on the last PODD show that Pascal's a guy that I feel like we haven't talked enough about, and he's still made a handful of pretty good plays, but he's just it's been like in weird circumstances where we haven't had an opportunity to really like talk about him as much. Like he was getting sacks, like, and I couldn't even find ways to like work it into my observations, you know what I mean? Because like just there was so much other stuff going on. So I do think Pascal certainly has a role. It's not as I don't think it's as a starter though. I think that has certainly gone to Levi. But their roles are Josh, Pascal, and Levi are going to overlap in certain sets, but then they're also going to be very different in other sets. Like in sub packages, I think Levi is going to be more in, Josh is going to be more out. But it's when you go into like that kind of 5-man front base, that's when they kind of overlap, and that's when the advantage is going to Levi right now.
Yeah. Overall, I would say like I was a little bit underwhelmed by Pascal so far.
Well, yeah, I mean he got beat out, right?
Right.
By a guy who's on fire, too.
Right.
So
yes, and so I think a lot of it was just like we kind of got blindsided by this whole thing. We're all talking about like, could this be Josh Pascal's breakout season? Year 3, we've seen a couple of year 3 breakouts, and so he's the guy that we're looking. He's the guy that entered camp as a starter, and then like literally, I was about to make a wrestling reference, but I knew I was going to bungle it. Like whatever out of nowhere, that wrestling meme, like RKO, is that what it is? I don't know. Well, I know. If Ryan was here and I see him in the chat, he would have like it's just like out of nowhere from the rafters, whatever, Sting dropping through the rafters. I'm only making wrestling references. I don't know why. Came over and just like took the job away from him and is running with it. And it even sounds like he had a strong couple practices against the Giants. And so, yeah, he's by far the player on the roster. Pascal is the player by far on the roster that's impacted most by Levi improving as he did.
I think you missed the opportunity, like did the Undertaker in any circumstance coming out of the coffin or whatever, like that that's easy.
You're right.
Right? Because like Levi,
why are there so many good wrestling references of coming out of nowhere?
So I mean, look, Levi was written off, right? Like he was,
by us
and
too.
then also
I'm not gonna pretend like I didn't. Like,
and then 2 weeks into camp, and Zeitler's like, you guys might have Lions might have two $20 million defensive tackles. And I'm like, whoa, slow down.
I think when I first read that quote, I'm like, oh, well, he's talking about Aleem and Reader.
Yeah.
No, he was not talking about Reader.
No,
he was talking about Levi.
That's how good Levi has been, which is take a few deep breaths and make sure he's able to hold up, because this is the guy you saw at Washington. This is the guy that you were expecting to come out in 2021 and tear stuff up.
All right, last question here, and I saved special teams for last. And somehow, if I was being a little bit more disciplined with our time, I would probably just bump this and not talk about it. But you know what? It's the kickoff rule. And that's the one aspect of special teams I actually enjoy. So let's talk about the kickoff. Facetious Fool asks, much has been made of the new kickoff and how we may be keeping unusual players because of it. But honestly, how much of a difference will it make to the roster? What 1 or 2 players make the cut this year because of the kickoff that wouldn't have? Let me give you my take real quick, and I want to see if you agree with me or disagree with me. Obviously, this play matters more, right? We had the official come in last Friday and talk to us about how 21% of kickoffs were returned last year, and that number is definitely going to go up to like 75-80%, maybe even higher, right? Like
because of the benefit of having to put the ball in play.
Yeah, kickers,
right? Yeah,
kicking teams are very much discouraged from touchbacks unless they can line drive it. And
penalized essentially because if they don't.
Yes, and if the ball's in play, meaning it lands between the 0 and 20, there is no fair catching. So you're going to get returns.
Yep.
So without a doubt, it's a more important play. My argument, though, is that the Lions have always valued this play. Even when the kickoffs were not being returned a lot, they valued their special teamers, their core special teamers. And because of that, I don't think it's going to change much. I don't think it might not change at all. We talked a little bit during the break how maybe you keep an extra a kick return specialist because you need 2 now. But outside of that, I don't really think that they're going to keep anybody special that they weren't going to keep it before, because remember, it's not just kickoffs. Like, punts are still very important in this game. And I think there's a lot of crossover between punt coverage, punt return, and kick return and kick coverage. I think we mentioned it during the break, those are very similar plays now in what you want from both those skill sets. So I don't really think the makeup of the roster is going to change that much.
All right. Well, I'll take the back half of that question because I think it will change a little bit.
Okay.
Right. I think the roster construction, most notably, they don't have a fullback this year. And I think that opens the door for another tight end, right? Like, I think that 4th tight end spot could be, 1, partially because they're not using a fullback as much on offense, but 2, because a tight end is going to be better suited for these special teams situations, right? And whether it's punts or the extra kickoffs or whatever, tight ends, bigger blockers that are athletic, they're going to benefit. So I don't know if that's going to open the door for like a Parker Hess to make his way in and maybe, jump ahead of James Mitchell, or if maybe James Mitchell can just show enough on special teams to really solidify himself in that spot. Because right now Zylstra has been repping as tight end 3. And then the other guy that I'll say could benefit from that is Jamar Jefferson, who probably keeping a 5th running back would have been, not something we considered before this rule. His work on special teams in different phases of special teams, and his work as a reliable running back on offense has put him in a spot where he's going to be competing against other guys that maybe are special teams only guys. And if you're looking at a guy who only plays special teams versus a guy like Jefferson who can play special teams and is a back that can be used in a variety of different ways, he becomes more valuable. And Campbell almost said this, almost said exactly this, right? Not too many days ago, when he said, or was it Ben Johnson that was saying, like, the guys that can do, if you can just do one thing, you better do that one thing really, really good.
Yeah.
And if you can't, you better be able to do a lot of things good. And so right now, Jamar could be a guy that is in a spot where he's better than maybe a Brandon Joseph, who we're talking about maybe has now got a good opportunity, because now Brandon's playing real well at safety, but if he's not, but if all of a sudden, like, if they like CJ Moore ahead of him at safety 4 or something like that, then Jamar's all of a sudden in a spot. Brandon Joseph, I just blanked on his name. Brandon Joseph is another guy who could benefit from this, because again, you need bigger athletes who can tackle, and that's safeties as well. So you look at CJ Moore maybe getting himself more solidified, but I think he was probably making the team anyways. Maybe the injury to Moseley plus the new kickoff rules, that opens the door for Brandon. So those guys, those kind of 3 guys that I think are on the fringe, could all of a sudden be in really good spots. And that new kickoff rule is going to play a factor into it.
All right, we'll leave the discussion there. If you want more Lions chat, if we didn't answer your question, I encourage you all to join our live shows on YouTube and Twitch. That's youtube.com/@PrideOfDetroit and twitch.tv/PrideOfDetroit, because after we turn the mics off here, we're going to hang out with them for a little bit and answer their questions. But for everyone that's been sending all the nice words to us in the return of the podcast, to everyone who said hi to us at training camp, said nice things, emails, whatever, we see it all. We appreciate you all. But until next time, for Eric, I'm Jeremy. It's Chaos. Be kind.
Recording stopped.
Okay. Boop.
I wasn't going to let that question go unanswered on the back half there. You were just like,
what was it?
Easy, quick special teams question, and let's just end it.
Oh,
was like,
what
no,
one or
let's
two
answer
players
the
may
whole-
make the cut?
Yeah.
My answer was I don't think it's going to
When
change.
when you wanted to go first, I thought, oh no, he's going to steal Jamar Jefferson.
No, I want to seem
That's-
less because I'm a little bit worried that I'm not coming off as objective about Jamar Jefferson because I had a long conversation with him and I like his story. So for you to hype him up a little bit, it makes me seem even better.
I only did it for you though.
Oh, okay. Harry, how am I supposed to do that? Okay. I mean, I guess I might as well. So, I'm not able to I was going to go to the Savannah Bananas baseball game this weekend. And if you don't know who they are, it's like this minor league baseball team that like, it seems like a lot of fun. Like they do a bunch of crazy stuff during the game. They have different rules. The scoring is winning by inning. So if you outscore your opponent in the first inning, you're leading 1-0. But anyways, there's 3 tickets. Order of the Blazing Horse in there. That are up for grabs. I don't know how you plan on distributing them, but if anybody is interested, send me a DM on Twitter. It's in Cleveland. It's Saturday night, 7 p.m. this upcoming week. So if you're interested, send me a DM. Or slide into Order of the Blazing Horse's Whispers if you're on Twitch.
Have they released Cut Down Day for 2024? I saw Katie asked. I think I tried to look it up the other day and I couldn't find it. But based on what they've done historically, it's usually the Tuesday after the last preseason game, so that would make it the 27th. That's my guess. But I have not seen an official day. But that's what I'm guessing, Katie.
Austin, yes, they are the ones that dance and do trick plays. Like they there's some, I don't know what the rules are, but like there's something if you do a trick play when you catch like a fly ball, it's like 2 outs or end of inning or something. Also, the coolest rule is that if someone in the crowd makes the catch on a foul ball, it's an out. I love that. Get the crowd involved. I agree with you, Austin.
Nicholas in the chat asked a couple of times about, I think it was Nicholas, was asking about, are they going to bring in a body for Moseley? We talked about that at the jump. Basically, we said no, and we explained why. So if you want to, when this is over, you can relook at the VOD and go to the beginning, and you'll be able to get a more thorough answer on that.
August 27th is what Chad is saying about the cut down date.
That's what I figured. But
what day of the week
couldn't
is that?
find it officially. Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
You know what's crazy this year because of how Labor Day falls? My kids will be the kids start school that week. So I will have the kids at school that day, which is a little different than what it's been in the past.
It is.
It's hard to do cut down day when you're watching 3 kids.
It's a tough day in general.
Yeah. I saw other questions that I wanted to get. I think your DM has some screenshots in it.
Yes. So I'm going to have to mess with the stream for a second here while I get that set up.
So Doc Matty Ice asked, with the starters getting so many reps in joint practices, would the NFL ever step in and outlaw that to make the preseason more productive? I think they're going the other way. I think they're trying to add an 18th game and make the preseason only 2 games.
Yeah.
So like I think they're trying to wash the preseason almost all together. And they're going to get it to a point where it's only going to be like reserves because they want every game costs the same, right?
Don't panic.
And so yeah, I don't think they would. I don't think they would ever try and force teams to play the starter. It's a great question. I just think the league's going the other way.
Sorry, you're just going to have to look at my face for a second here while I change my background. That's the only way I can make this happen.
Here's another KD question.
By the way, I feel really quick on that last question because I feel like we talked about it last year. I think the more likely situation is that that the NFL tries to somehow profit off of joint practices. Like, to me, it almost makes more sense to
Well, they've already started.
try to televise
They've already
those.
started. Yeah, like they've already they're in 4 different camps. What they're definitely headed that way.
All right. We should be back. Wait, why did it go back to this background? That's weird. Nope. Huh. Why did it do that? Do I need to reset this? No. Huh. Weird.
You're rusty.
I did this before and it was fine. Hold on. We're going to go back again. You're going to have to look at me one more time. Sorry.
All right.
Sorry, chat.
I'd ask.
I can try.
Can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
Because I saw this one earlier. This one's also from KD.
There we go.
Do you see the Antonio Pierce put his through conditioning tests?
No.
Oh, that's
What the what?
I don't like that.
Oh no. What? Oh,
So
boy.
like he was having like the coaches go through like the standard, I don't know if it was standard, but sort of similar sort of thing that the players have to go through.
Yeah.
So her question is, which Lions coach/assistant coach would struggle if the Lions had to take their own conditioning test?
Oh, I don't want to answer this.
Well,
This is going to turn into like a body shaming segment.
Well, who would do the best then? Let's flip it around.
Oh, I've ruined this. What has happened?
I think Fraley would actually do better than people think because Fraley is a hands-on coach and he is constantly like trying to get in and get like his hand in the dirt. So I do think Fraley would
Steve Hayden.
do well. You think Hayden looks like he could play still?
That's what I'm
certainly
saying.
true. I thought you would say Shepard. Shep looks like he could play. He's still
Shep looks like he
super
could play, but based on his Instagram, that dude eats a lot of food and a lot of really good food.
Oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name? Oh man, who's the assistant quarterbacks coach? The former Ohio State quarterback.
Oh, I can't remember his name either right now. He's got initials.
I keep wanting to say it's not him though.
It's not CJ Stroud. Who's who? It's JT Barrett. There it is.
JT Barrett. I kept wanting to say Cardale Jones, but I know I'm like, no, it's not that dude. JT Barrett. Thank you. I think he would do well.
Sure. So what are these conditioning things? What did it look like? It's just a conditioning test?
I briefly saw it run through my timeline earlier.
He made them run like the conditioning test?
Yeah, they had to do like certain things to show that they were like in shape enough to make it through the season. I mean, I'll go back and try and find it, but I just saw it in passing. So
weird.
I
refunded your channel points, by the way. I don't know what I did it one time and now I can't figure it out now. So sorry about that. Maybe I'll try to for the next show. Maybe I'll just have it as my background, and it'll be a freebie to you because I already refunded your points.
So generous.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say who doesn't perform well in the conditioning test. I think you can probably use your imagination and figure out who it probably is, because I think there's probably a clear answer, but I'm not gonna say who. Zazu, you've been summoned. Oh,
if they're bigger than me, they're probably going to struggle because I know I would struggle.
Yeah.
So.
Come here, bud. Come here, bud.
Although former NFL players certainly have an advantage.
Let me ask you this: who would win in a fight, Joe Shane or Brett Holmes? With Joe Shane pulling guys off of scrums yesterday.
Come on. Have you seen former defensive tackle Brad Holmes in person? He's big.
He is big.
Big dude, man. He is not small. I mean, he's small when you stand him next to Campbell, but he is not small.
Rod Wood. I don't know.
Rod Wood. Rod Wood is he would, I would think he would struggle because he's older, you know. I don't want to be ageist here, but I know I would struggle again. He's older than me, so.
Shane's kind of a dork, right? Like if you watched Hard Knocks, he's kind of a dork, and I use that almost as a lovingly term. Like I'm a dork. But he's a dork. I don't think he could. I don't think he could throw down. I
actually.
Go ahead and say it. I already know what you're going to say. Go ahead and say it.
I don't know if I would like. I feel like dork is too kind. Like
Goober?
I don't know.
Goober, is Goober better?
That's more
closer.
that's closer. That's a lot closer. Gosh. No, you know, when I think Goober, there's one head coach that I think of.
Head coach?
And that's the Cardinals head coach. He is a goober.
They do those. You know what? Those two guys, Jonathan Gannon, they kind of get
Gannon. Yeah,
I do see some of the same vibes coming off of him and Joe Shane.
Yeah.
Explosions. You're so calm today. He's not. Zazu's 5.5. Erik could not beat up all the beat writers. He couldn't fight his way out of the POD room.
The dads know. The dads in the chat know.
Oh, he's got dad strength.
Dude, it's real.
Okay,
I'm telling you,
not
it's
coming
so
after
weird.
your child though. That's
no,
when
it doesn't matter. No.
Oh, you just get it across the board.
Universally, it happens. It's like a power that like your child is born and you're like, good job, honey, and you're like, that was a lot of hard work that you did. I told you to breathe. I'm not. I don't want to take any credit for that. But then you wake up the next morning and you have the superpower. Oh, I would probably not be a very fair fighter. That's probably true.
You're all about just getting point A to point B. It doesn't matter how you get there.
That's accurate. I have an agenda.
Ryan wants us to talk about the Twitter sensation Ricky, who,
oh gosh,
I'm going to be quite honest. He fed me that the St. Brown and the Panay Sewell deals were getting done the day that they got done. And at that point, I didn't know who Ricky was. And so I'm like,
oh, no. We learned about him at the draft.
Well, yeah,
remember?
It's the same thing.
Oh, because it was before. Sorry.
Yeah.
That was before.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it was the same week.
Yes.
But yeah, and then so we didn't know at the time, but then like he started tipping picks before everyone in the draft, and well, he obviously got that, you know, the extensions right, and then he started tipping picks in the draft. We're like, who the heck is this guy? He's got a dog for an avatar. And like then he did it again with the Tua and the Jordan Love extensions. Same thing. Like he tweeted out like, it's, you know, it's going to be a cheesy Finney day or something, like clearly making references to the Packers and Dolphins. And then it happens later that day. And so now there's an ongoing battle. Like he got cyber bullied so hard that he's like, this is my last scoop. And he's talking about,
he was getting like death threats. And stuff. It was like not just bullied. It was like,
and basically he's saying essentially Brandon Ayuk to the Steelers is
he has
done
been for a while. Yeah.
And then at like when that kind of went viral, all the national guys pushed back and like, nah, no, it's not happening. It's not happening. There's nothing in place. And through the course of this week, the conversation has very much shifted towards what Ricky is saying. Now, I think there's probably a happy medium here where it might not be a done deal, but it was always very close to being a done deal, whereas national audience, the national guys were like, there's nothing in place here. So I know Ryan is really pulling for Ricky. I'm pulling for Ricky. Some of the other line speed is pulling for Ricky. I don't know if he's going to be right or wrong, but he was definitely ahead of the national guys on the Steelers being very interested and very involved. And but that's the difference between like being a reporter and being kind of an amateur reporter, where like Ricky's like, it's a done deal, where the reporter's like, I'm not going to report it's a done deal until it's a done deal.
Right. Yeah, he's got a lot more leeway to be wrong.
Yes, correct. Yes.
It is interesting though. We don't know where he came from, right? Like we don't know.
No.
Like it's obviously some guy that's got connections, because he's been right too many times
for
to
sure
not be.
Yes.
I wonder if it's like he's like some intern at the NFL Network that like got fired or something, and like now he still has like people in the building that are like giving him information, or you know what I mean? I don't know. It's very interesting.
Yeah. But Ryan does bring up a good point that it seems like the only teams that are in the mix right now are AFC teams. So Brandon Ayuk going to the AFC is good news, period.
Sure.
Whether it's the Steelers, the Patriots, and who else is involved? I feel like
Browns.
Browns would probably be the worst of the bunch since they're closest to being a contender. I don't know. It's a fun thing. It's a fun thing to follow though, because he's super fun with it, right? And it's relatively harmless, and his hit rate is pretty darn good. He's like everything he said. At least there's been significant smoke or fire there, right? And
I'm not as tuned into Ricky news as you guys are, but he's definitely like I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
But like he was I remember in the draft he was doing very well the first 2 days, and then on day 3 he's just like,
well, look,
yeah.
He was behind, but I think at some point
Or
he's just
maybe it
like,
was-
on day 3 he was just like, I'm done. I want to go. I'm watching baseball today.
Yeah.
Which
Maybe
again, like that's awesome. You can be an insider breaking news on one of the biggest weekends of the NFL, and then one day you can just be like, no thanks, I'm just gonna chill.
Maybe it was day 2 that he was starting to get him wrong. He started getting a couple.
He did
wrong.
get a couple
forget.
wrong. That's right. I forgot that he did.
He started getting some wrong, and people were that's when the hate started.
Yeah.
Because and it's ridiculous, right? Like it's ridiculous. It's the same thing as like people getting mad at me because I said Moseley was in line to start. Like it's just, you can't, if you're ever wrong in this business, there are going to be people that are going to come out and yell at you for it. Right.
And forever,
like even
forever.
Oh,
they will
forever.
never forget, which is why like reporters
I still
have
get
to
people
be
yelling at me.
I mean,
I still get people yelling at me about Tracy Walker.
right.
Like I'm like, he was good at one point. like I was right at one point. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's frustrating. It's also like,
but that's why like our standards are pretty high in terms of breaking news, right?
Oh, yeah, I don't want to be wrong.
We don't break news that often. I'm personally not that interested in doing it because it's mostly a national reporter's job now anyways. Like agents are giving scoops to them and not to local reporters, and that's fine. I don't care. Whatever. But
I can think, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but when we grasp news, when we have a tip, which happens relatively often, we keep our mouths shut until like we're sure.
I don't know, a handful of times I've gotten news ahead of other people.
Yep.
And every single time it's been right. But also, every single time, I've never been able to confirm it with a second source. And so I've never, and it's fine. Like, it's not like I'm not, I mean, that's just part of the gig. Like,
Yeah.
I'd rather not be wrong than first, right?
Right.
Like being first is just a made up, you know, posturing battle at this point.
And listen, I was talking to a reporter about how like the process goes in reporting news and breaking news and things like that. And, you know, there was a very strong rumor out there that pretty much everyone knew was going to happen. And this person talked to an agent who's like, hey, can you at least like just tip me off when it's official? And I think the agent agreed and then didn't do it. Gave it to a national guy. Like it's just how the business is going. And so to me, it's just not worth it. It's not worth it because you don't want to be wrong. You don't want to be wrong because you don't want to be wrong just because of the ethics of the position, right? Like if we're reporting news and we fail to do that accurately, we're not doing our jobs well enough. And people are going to, the way I always put it, and I think it's very, very true, is that it's much easier to earn trust and earn respect. It's much easier to lose trust and lose respect than it is to earn it back. You mess up once, you're going to have to be right 99 times to win that person back, to win some people back.
Yep.
I don't know how we got into this because of Ricky. Anyways, I get into these.
I think there were more questions, but I don't know if I can go back far enough to find any other ones. So if anyone else has something, they can just resend it because I can't go back.
Someone asked what weight Zylstra is at. I don't have the answer to that. I would just refer to what it says on the team page, which isn't always accurate, to be completely honest, but I don't think anybody's asked him. Can he be useful as an undersized tight end? Will he just flex out at X a lot? Can he block for a low weight?
They list him at 240. 240 is pretty good size.
Yeah. Do you think there's any plans to like make him a little bit? I mean, he still has to earn his way onto the roster, right? I think we can all agree.
Sure.
I think we can probably agree with that. It does seem like he's third in line right now, generally speaking.
Well, you have to do more than one thing. And I think he is learning to do more than one thing, and that's why he's getting reps where he is. Like his blocking was not the best when he joined the team 3 years ago, but it's been getting better and better and better. And like,
yeah,
it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing to observe happen is how a player who's on the fringe or the bubble, or maybe even ends up on a practice squad, progresses over their years. Because like Jamar Jefferson is an excellent example. We've seen slow and steady progress over the last 3 years, and maybe he's put himself in a situation to make elite. We've seen it from Levi, right? Once he gets healthy, we've seen Zylstra get better in certain areas. Now there's some guys that don't. There's some guys that are who they were when they came in as rookies, and that's it.
Right.
But there's a handful of these guys on this roster that look. Derek Barnes, right? Slow, steady progress, and then all of a sudden it's like boom, makes a leap, and he's a starter a year ago. And so it's a fun aspect of watching these guys progress. And so I think Zylstra is getting better as a blocker, especially, since I think he was getting better last year, and then the injury just kind of took him away from everybody, right? And so you didn't get to see that progress.
There was one other couple asking predictions for the game on Thursday. I mean, given that the Lions aren't going to play most of their starters, no idea.
Last year they rested 28 starters. Or sorry, 28 players, 21 of them were starters.
Right.
And then when I wrote the article earlier today about them resting guys, I made a list of the guys who were also maybe not starters, but were injured. And that was another 6 guys.
Right.
So you could have over a third of the roster not suited up.
Right.
Right. So it's going to be a lot of A lot of young guys.
A lot of bad offensive linemen, probably. I mean, that's just it. I think I said this yesterday on the PODcast. Like, when you get into reserves, when you get into second and third string quarterbacks and second and third string offensive lines, bet the under. If you're scummy enough to be betting on preseason football,
Sorry
to judge, but I'm judging you if you're betting on preseason football.
And
low scoring games.
Yeah. I mean, the defenses are bad too, but
did I? Yes, true. Did I say that just because I knew Ryan was in the chat?
maybe.
Yes, I did. Is he taking offense to it? Yes, he is.
I'm sure he is. Don't worry, Ryan. I got you. Don't need to take that abuse. I'll DM you the HR number, by the way. Dan Pass. Do you think the Lions were ever in on Quandre Diggs?
No.
Coming back? I don't think so either, which is disappointing because they kind of have their guys, right? And then they have a young developing player in Brandon Joseph, and then a special teams guy in CJ Moore, and I think they were content with that.
Yeah, at this point, people are talking about wide receivers, right, in the chat too. I see, people talking about Robert Woods.
I'm okay with that,
but
he's old.
I don't think there's interest.
Is reliable. That's the thing. I don't think so either. I think he's a little undersized for the X for what they want, right? He's got reliable hands.
I don't mind adding competition to that room, but I think the Lions think they have enough.
Wide receiver 5. If you're telling me he's coming in as wide receiver 5 as a reliable 5th receiver that can play multiple spots, I'm fine with that, right? But like, I'm not he's not going to break the bank, so I'm willing to listen to wide receiver talk.
Still got that roster spot hanging around.
I don't even know how many they have at this point. Like, they might even more, because like I haven't.
Well, they added that guard.
Well, they're gonna move. They're gonna have to move Moseley,
but
right?
They're probably not going to do it until
they added Pat O'Connor as well. So they had the extra spot. Now they're probably gonna have 2 extra spots.
But no, they would have to move.
Oh, they're gonna hold on to him.
They got to hold on to him unless they want to end his season.
Right. So they're gonna end up with holding on to 2 guys. So
that's going to be an interesting thing to track, though, right? Because we're already at 2 guys, and we talked about this rule a little bit before, but
that's the max you can have.
Right. There's this new rule where on cutdown day you can place players on IR, but they're now eligible to return, whereas before they had to make your 53-man roster if you wanted them to return from IR. But there's a maximum of 2, and the Lions already have 2 guys in John Kaminsky and Emmanuel Moseley that fit that mold, but they still have 3 preseason games to play. Now, is there someone higher on the depth chart that's going to be playing in these preseason games that might get injured that you'd want to fit in that role? Maybe, maybe not, but at some point the training camp practices are also going to get toned down a little bit, and so there's probably going to be less danger of a starter or a primary reserve getting injured, knock on wood. Are you licking yourself? Don't do that. So I don't know.
No, I'd stop doing that.
It's just like, it's scary because if a starter suffers a serious injury that's not a season ender from now on out, that's going to have to bump one of those other guys off. And then
I think at this point, I think the way you have to look at it at this point is you're not landing a starter. Like, you're landing like person 51, 2, or 3 on your roster. If that's what you're getting. If you're getting anybody you're getting at this point, it's all end of the roster guys.
Okay. You changed topics on me.
Sorry.
I
got confused.
I was just concerned if a
starter, that's where you were going.
No, if a starter gets injured between now and cutdown date, what do you do with Kaminsky? What do you do?
Oh, you mean
Moseley?
that? All right. Sorry. Yeah, no, Kaminsky goes to IR. That's what happens. In my opinion. Because right now, even if he comes back, where is he? Third behind Levi and Pascal?
I think the other roundabout way, and this is something that they've done in the past, is you IR, you cut with an injury settlement, and then you bring him back.
Yeah, I mean they did that. They've done that in the past with guys, but I don't know.
It's
I still think Kaminsky's the guy that gets got.
yeah.
That'd be my guess.
You don't think it's tough because like I think a lot of people are like done with Moseley now, and understandably so. 3 major injuries in 3 years, and why
Well, I mean,
why hang on to that? But at the same time, I think based on average recovery times, he's probably more likely to be ready earlier.
Mm-hmm. He's also a guy that was repping with the ones, and Kaminsky was repping with the threes.
True.
So that's what I see. Like, and I know
But
people
Kaminsky
haven't
got re-signed
seen
here to a 2-year deal. They like him a lot,
and then got his pay reduced.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Moseley got 2 1-year deals, like because of injury. So for me, I think Moseley's a better player. And I know they like Kaminsky's leadership, and I know that but like, where do you fit him? Like right now, I see a clearer path to snaps for Moseley than I do for Kaminsky.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be like, there's guys on this that we're talking about, like on the bubble, that are massive fan favorites. People love Kaminsky. People love Dan Skipper, like cult hero Dan Skipper, because of that, the reporting eligible. But like,
Yeah.
when it comes down to performance, I think he's got his work cut out for him. I think, Kaminsky's in the same boat. They love his leadership, but this is what he is, right?
Because multiple people have shared it in our Slack, in our Twitch page. I'm going to do it right now.
There is no cap on IR. So they can have as many players on IR. They just have to pay them, and then if you're on IR and you're being paid, you have to be able to fit underneath the media.
Watch out. Look, you don't know when I'm coming.
Underneath the cap, salary cap.
Look, now you running around looking all dumb. Look, got you playing Ring It or the Rosie.
That is a tweet from Kirby Joseph.
I'm going to start it off slow.
Classic Kirby.
He's funny.
He is funny. RGA, thank you for 5 straight stream watches. Says, does this count against the total IR for... You just answered that. Sorry. All right. I think maybe it's time to get out of here.
All right.
All right. Get some dinner. We'll be back live streaming Sunday. I don't think we're going to do anything right after the game. We were playing around with the idea of live streaming during the game. I don't think I'm going to do that. It might be something that Chris is interested in doing, so keep an eye out for that. If not here, then on his stream. That's twitch.tv/nodecaf. And I'll... No decaf. Make sure you're following him there. If you're on Twitch, on YouTube, you can't see that link, but check him out there. PODD, we'll have a preview of the preseason game coming out Thursday morning. We'll have a post game coming out probably Friday morning. And then we'll be back to our daily camp recaps starting on Sunday. Ramping those back up. It's a lot of PODD content this offseason.
Yeah, there's not that many practices left, though. That's
true.
the unfortunate part of that feed of media.
True.
Eventually, that dries up.
None of my good friends are live right now, so we're not going to read anyone here on Twitch. We're just going to end the stream. So I'll leave it at this. Thank you for watching. We always love our live audience. You guys help present a fun environment, ask good questions during the break, and make this a little less rote than just answering Twitter questions. So appreciate you guys on Twitch. Appreciate you guys on YouTube in no particular order, to be clear. Because while our Twitch community is the oldest and maybe more passionate, there's a lot more people on YouTube, Twitch people. Got to pick up your numbers over on Twitch because YouTube's outdoing you. Just throwing it out there. Get your friends. Bring them to Twitch. Or, you know what? Maybe it's just we're living in a YouTube world now.